Dan Abbott at Southern Maine Community College. This video is to show students in the CAD graphics class how to approach the second assignment in CAD graphics, well, 01, 02, whatever other CAD graphics class you're in. So I'm going to open up my Brightspace page. I'm going to change so that it looks like what you'll see as a student. So I'm going to go to Assignments. Under Assignments, I'm going to select Introduction to Orthographic Projection. When I open that assignment, it gives me a description of what's required, and there are a couple of files I need it to download. One of them is this PDF file. It looks like this. Now what I'm going to do on this one is I'm going to bring it to my other monitor, but what you're looking at is a view of a very simple part with a front view, a right side view, and a top view. And your assignment is to create the views necessary with proper layers, proper line types, to add the dimensions using a dimension cell that I'm going to provide, and then adding a title block, which is not the one you're looking at there, but it's another file that I'm going to provide. You probably either want to print this file or download this file so that you have it on your computer, and you can either look at it on a different monitor or print it out and have it in front of you. So I'm going to move it aside, go back here. You have another link here, and that's to a title block drawing that you're going to be using. So if you select that, and also download it, put it someplace where you can find it. In my case, it went to my downloads folder. I think probably that's what will go to yours as well. But you would want to put it in a folder of some kind where you can find it on your local computer. Move that over to the side. So we'll come back to that in a minute. We're not going to use that right away. It also tells you you're going to bring that title block in. Where to place it, you're going to have to modify a few things, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Then you're going to add some dimensions. Again, I'm going to show you how to do that, and then you're going to upload the file. So I'm now moving back to AutoCAD. This version of AutoCAD is 2022. That's because I'm doing this from my desktop in my office at school, where IT hasn't had a chance yet to update to 2023, which is what you'll be using in the lab and what you'll be using on our virtual desktop. And that's what you can download from that link that I sent you on downloading software from Autodesk site. There will be no difference between what you do in your version and what I'm going to do in this version. However, it may look slightly different. I'm going to start a new drawing. And the first thing I'm going to do is set up layers that I can use for this drawing. So I'm going to have visible lines, hidden lines, etc. Right now the only layer I have is layer 0. I've modified my interface so that it doesn't look like the one that you might have. I've made the background lighter so you can see things a little bit better. I have moved my command line to the top, made it bigger so you can read it a little better. That's primarily I do that so you can read it better when I'm in class and doing something with the overhead projector. So I need to create layers. Well, I can create layers by going to the Layer Properties button and then going through the same steps you went through on the first assignment. But I can also do something called AutoCAD Design Center. ADC is the alias for that. AD Center is called, AutoCAD Design Center. I have mine open already. And the reason I'm going to do that is this. It's possible to take material, to take elements of one drawing and move them into another drawing. Right now the only drawing I have right here that is open is the drawing I'm currently in. The easiest way to use Design Center, at least for beginners, is to then open up an existing file. So what I'm going to do is go and open up a file that you did at the beginning. And it will be, hang on just a minute, it's going to be that drawing that you did with all the line weights and line types. So I'm going to open it, and here it is. So this is a completed drawing. Now you'll notice in this one you've already set up the layers. You can go through that same process for the drawing number 2, or once you have content in one drawing, if you have them both open, go to the drawing that you're working on right now where there are no layers, go to AutoCAD Design Center by typing ADC, then it opens up. When it opens up, you'll have 2 drawings here now. If you go and expand one of the drawings and say I want to take the layers, if I now take and copy all those layers, I can highlight them by left clicking and dragging my mouse to the left, right click, add layers. Now even though I just started this drawing and did nothing to create layers, I now have layers. So I can go down here and set visible as my current layer. Now one thing that some people had difficulty with in the first assignment is the fact that line weights weren't showing up. possible to make them show up by turning them on and off. In order to do that, though, you have to have the little button on the status bar at the bottom that turns line weight on and off. Either that, you have to actually type LW for line weight, display, select line weight display, and now it'll let you turn it on and off from the command line. I like to have that little button down there so I can quickly look at line weights and then turn them off. So the way you're going to do that, if you don't have it showing, and you won't by default, is go over to the three little lines in the lower right hand corner, come up and look for the line weight tool, put a check mark beside it, then it'll show up. You might also remember that I eliminated the check mark for grid, snap mode, dynamic input, ortho mode, isometric drafting, and I added line weights, and I normally add coordinates as well, which I've done here. So I showed you that in that first class, and this is simply the way I prefer to have the status bar set up so I can turn things on and off, and I get rid of things that I don't want to deal with at all. So I'm going to go back to this drawing. Now, here's the drawing that you're duplicating, and this drawing is simply a very basic orthographic drawing, and you're going to follow the rules for orthographic projection that you learned or are going to learn in print reading, where you have a front view looking directly at one surface of a part. In this particular case, we're looking at what I'm going to call the front, and you draw it 90 degrees from your eye so that it's just the outline. Then to the right of it, you put the view that it would look like if you went around the other side to the right and looked back at the part. This is known as a top view. That varies in the rest of the world somewhat. The views are always the same, but their locations are sometimes different. So for right now, this is what you're going to do, because this is the orthographic projection known as third angle projection. That's what we use in the United States. So I'll go back and forth a little bit, but you'll notice you have lines that are thick for your visible lines, lines that are thin for hidden lines, center lines, etc. So the part we're drawing, or the part you're creating a drawing for, looks like this. It's got an L shape if you look at it from the right. In the front it looks kind of rectangular. There's a hole that goes all the way through it. And as a result, when you're looking at it from the right, you can't see the hole. However, we represent the hole by drawing a line along the bottom edge and the top edge in the right side view and making them hidden. And then in the top view, which would look more or less like that, we do the same thing, where we draw the edge of the hole so that you can see what the edge looks like. You're not actually looking at the hole itself. Instead, you're pretending, wrong one, we're pretending that we can see through the part. So if you look down at this from the top, those edges right there could not be seen with the rest of the part in place, but we're going to draw it as though we can see them, and then using the hidden line type to show that they're actually inside the part. So that's what you're drawing right there. I'm going to go back to AutoCAD. Now I'm going to have the layer set that I want to draw on, which is visible. If I didn't pick it to begin with, I could just move things to that layer. It's not a big deal. I'm going to draw this a couple of different ways. This icon down here is the x-axis and y-axis. Where there's a square, that means that's the 0, 0 point. The z-axis is coming directly out of the screen at you. It would be like looking down at the floor. And if you're looking down at the floor, the x-axis would be coming up off of the floor. Now, I'm going to draw a line. And I don't want to draw the line at 0, 0 because that's kind of in the way. So I'm just going to draw it at 2, comma 2. So it's 2 in the x direction and 2 in the y direction away from 0. Get my tracking line, type in a 4, go straight up, type in a 2.5. Go to the left, I could type in a 4, but instead I'm going to acquire that point, move up, left click as long as I have both tracking lines visible. Like that. No matter where my cursor is, left clicking will go to the intersection of those two lines. When I come back, I want to go to the end point of this line. Come out here to get the end point. Don't go right on the end point because sometimes there's other lines there in complex drawings. So just go off the end a little bit. If you get past the midpoint when you're looking at an end point, it's going to go to the other end. So as long as you're closer to that end, once you snap it does that. Now that's the line command. On the right, just to show you, I'm going to use the polyline command. PL is the alias, P-line is the name of the command. I want 2 inches between them in this particular drawing to give me enough room for my dimensions. Might not be 2 inches in every drawing. I'm going to go over 2 to start the polyline. 2.25 is the width of the right side view. I know the top, I know the height, but I'm going to acquire it anyway so I don't have to worry about remembering things like that. And to make sure that things line up, go over here, I'm going to type in a 0.5. Coming straight down, I'm typing a 2. And then again, I could do the math on this, or I could just say, give me that point, go directly above it, and do that. Now, when you're doing something where you're continuous and there's no break, at the end, if you type the letter C, it'll close it by going to where you started. The difference here is those are individual lines, and that's one individual entity that is the whole of the polyline. Poly stands for many. Polymer is a term that gets used for plastic. It means many molecules lined up. So anyway, that is many segments altogether. If I wanted to on this one, I could use the join command, put a window around all these things, and join them together. So now that's a closed polyline as well. So when I pick it, I get the entire thing and not just the lines. We use a different command for the top. Now you don't have to do all these commands the way I'm doing them. I'm just giving you an idea. There are different ways to produce geometry in this program and in every CAD program. I'm going to go to rectangle, hover. In other words, I'm not picking anything. Go up 2. Now in this case, I can't really track off of that and accurately draw this rectangle, but I know that it is 4 inches long at 4. At means starting from the point I just picked. Go 4 units in the X direction, comma, 2.25 in the Y direction. Now when I've done that, it's going to draw that exactly that length. So if I were to say, what is the distance from here to here? It's 2.25. From here, exactly 4, because that's what I typed in. Now I have a line that comes across here. That line represents that corner right there. I'm going to draw that line, and once again I'm going to acquire a point. This time I'm acquiring this point by hovering over the end until I get that little cross. If you get an extra one in there, hover over it again and it goes away. So if I didn't want this, hover, it's gone, hover, it's back. Hover, it's gone, no tracking line comes off it, no little cross. Hover, that one's gone, hover, that one's added. I'm going to bring the tracking line over till I get the intersection symbol, which is a green X, like that. Left click, come over, left click. Now that line is exactly lined up with this one, which is what I want. At the top there's a line that goes across here, and the line that goes across there, that line right here, represents the same corner as that one right there. So I'd like to come up and go over to line it up, but there's no way to do that directly without putting in something called a miter line. Here I can project directly because they line right up from the front to the right. Here I can project directly because it's lined up directly above. But when you go from the top to the right or the right to the top, in order to do a projection, what you have to do is make a tool called a miter line to help you do that. Now I'm back here. Now I'm going to make a miter line. I'm going to put on a construction layer. I've already made a construction layer. It's red. I'm going to set it current. I'm going to draw a line. And I want the construction line for the miter line to start at the intersection between those 2 lines right there. In other words, the spacing I put here might or might not be the same, but my miter line has to start with the lower edge of the top view, and the left edge of the right side view would meet if they were extended. Left click, and now I go up at an angle of 45. I wouldn't have been able to do that had I not come down here to polar tracking, pick the arrow, and set 45 as my tracking increment. Right now it's 90. I can go horizontal and then go 90 degrees till it's vertical, 90 till it's horizontal the other way, vertical, 90 till it's vertical going down. But if I change that to something else, like 5 for instance, now it'll track at every 5-degree increment. Which sounds like a good idea, except it's kind of difficult to draw when it gets small like that, So I like to make the increment whatever I'm actually needing. Because now I only get one, it looks like that. Now this length of this doesn't matter, although I could get that lined up and then type something in. So let's just say type in a 6 because I want it to go a certain distance. The key thing is it's 45 degrees. Now if I go back here, go back to visible, do a line, and I go from here up to here, and I come across, you notice it lines right up with the backside of this, which it has to. Do the same thing here, come across, because they're the same part, that depth has to be the same as the width over here. So the miter line allows me to project from one view to another. The only thing I really need to project up through, well actually I'll do something else later, this right here. Now I can acquire that, go up to the intersection, left click, come across. Now I have a choice. There's a command called trim. I can do that with a trim command. Looks pretty good. I could just grab the line, go to that little blue box which is called a grip. When it turns red, left click, drag it over, snap to that intersection. Now it's in the right place. Or if I'm being a little bit lazy, well, or efficient, I could go in here and say, I want to track from here, but I don't want to start drawing at the next point. So let's just do a temporary tracking point. Shift, right click, temporary track point. Hover over that corner, go over to here. Now I'm going to track from here, but I'm not drawing the line yet. I'm just tracking. I come over till and I've got an angle coming in that I don't really want. So I'm going to clean that up right there. I didn't want that 45, and sometimes that messes you up. So now I'm going to track over, get the intersection, left click, and if you look at the command line above, specify first point. Now I'm specifying the first point, and I can come over here to this point. So temporary tracking allows me to pick up a new tracking point without drawing from that point. So it basically is putting it in memory, saying temporarily track from here up to here, give me a new point, now track from that point. I can continue temporarily tracking from that point or just go over till I get what I want. That's most of the straight lines we can project right now. Now we're going to look at the fillet command. Fillet command is how we're going to create those rounds right there. And a fillet is a curve that is tangent to two other surfaces. This on the outside would actually be called a round. If it were a fillet, it would be on the inside like that. That is a fillet. That is a round. Now, geometrically, they're identical. Because they're identical geometrically, there's only one command to put them in there, and the command that's used is called fillet, not round. So if we fillet the corners, this is in SolidWorks by the way, if we fillet that corner, it'll put a tangent arc between those two surfaces that come together. If we go back to AutoCAD, we pick the fillet command here. Now we're going to pick those two edges, and those two edges are then going to be filleted. Now I've already set a radius here, but to tell you the truth, by default it's set to 0, which means nothing happens when you try to fillet two square corners, or a square corner, because a fillet with a radius of 0 is a sharp corner. So what I need to do first is when I'm in the fillet command, set a radius, 0.5 in this case, then pick your two edges. Repeat the fillet command, then pick your two edges, and now you have an arc tangent to that line and that line. And that is exactly what you want that fillet to look like. While I'm here, if I had to do 100 of these, I would type the word multiple first, then the fillet command, then when I do the radius and make it set to 0.5, is it? Yeah. Now I pick this one and I pick that one. It does it, but I don't have to repeat the command. I'm in the command until I'm done. So I could keep adding and adding and adding, and when I'm done, press enter. Now I didn't really want this one in here, so I'm going to undo it by typing U and then the space bar. Now I'm back to where I wanted to go. Now I'm going to add the arc up here. I'm going to do that with a circle. There is an arc command, and it is helpful sometimes. Most of the time though, you're going to create arcs either with the fillet command or by drawing circles and trimming them, most of the time. I want my circle to be at the midpoint. If I come over here and look at my running object snaps, I have quadrant and midpoint set, even though they're not the defaults. The reason I have them set is that I use them all the time. if I'm drawing a circle and I want to go to the midpoint, I just want to go to the midpoint. I can override the running object snaps by holding down the Shift key, pressing the right button, and picking midpoint. Now it's only looking for midpoints. No matter what I do, it's only going to find a midpoint. And then I could snap to that. Or I could come over to the running object snap button and say, no, I want a midpoint anytime. I don't want to have to type it in. Turn it on. And you know what, by the way, I'm going to want the same thing with the quadrants of a circle soon. I'm going to turn that on as well. Now, circle command, I come over here, snap to the midpoint, make a radius of 1. Now I'm going to go to the trim command, and I'm just going to drag through it and clean it up, and it's going to cut it back to the nearest cutting edge. Many times you want to pick the cutting edge, because otherwise it might leave stuff behind. So that command can be a little more than you intended. Now I've only got 2 more lines to draw. Those 2 lines to draw from here down to here. I'm going to project them directly. Enter. Enter again. From here down to here. Enter. Like that. Now I have my mouse set up a little differently than the default. By default, if I press the right button, I get a little menu right here. If I'm in a command like this one, and I press the right button, I get the enter command, and now I can get out. I like being able to press that right button and have it be the enter command without a menu. So what I did was went into options in AutoCAD, under user preferences, and under right click customization, I turned on something called time sensitive right click, which means if I click quickly, it's like pressing the enter key. If I click slowly, I get the menu. So I'm in the line command right now, and I'm drawing lines. If I press quickly, I'm out. Quickly, I'm back in the line command one more time, and it picks up the last point that I entered. Which means I can draw fairly quickly here on a bunch of lines without having to get that little menu that comes up. Otherwise, what I do is say, right-click, enter to get out. Right-click, repeat line. I don't want to do it that way. I want to just do a quick click. That's why I have that turned on. Now that's all my object lines that are straight. I do have a hole that goes through this. That's a circle. Because I put a midpoint on as an object snap, running object snap, I can track off of it and go up 1. D for diameter, even though it should be the default. Circles have diameters, but in 1984, the person who put AutoCAD together didn't know that and thought a radius made more sense. It doesn't, but type D for diameter or put the radius in and you can get what you need. Now all I have to do is put in the hidden lines. The hidden lines I'm going to put in by changing to the hidden line layer. I change the color to blue. Draw a line, and now I want to track off of that quadrant, and I can do that only because I set quadrant as one of the things AutoCAD's looking for all the time. So I go to the line command, hover, don't select anything, get the tracking line, intersection, intersection, escape. Right click to go to the line command, hover, come across, left click, right click gets out of it for me. Go back in the line command, do the same thing going up, left click, come out of it, hover, left click, come out of it. Now there's just one hidden line left. That hidden line is the back of that cutout right there. That's 1 inch back. So I could just come down here, hover over this, go to the right, type in a 1, and then drop that down. That's in the right place. Or I could project from here over, go down from here to there. And you got to be a little careful sometimes. Notice I'm getting the midpoint here. What I want is a tracking line. That's not a tracking line here. I want that right there. I want to be able to see that tracking line. Then what I've got to do, of course, is to trim that out so it looks like that. Or I say, let's draw a line. Let's temporarily track from the midpoint of that. Come over here to the intersection, come down. Now my tracking starts. I don't want to track coming down at 45, so I'm going to get rid of that. Come down here like that, and now I've got my hidden line. Now what I need to do is go to my center lines. I've got center lines coming down through here. I've got a center line and a center mark here. I've got another center line over here. I'm going to show you a technique for doing that. AutoCAD actually has a center line tool. I don't like it for a number of reasons, so I'm not going to use it. Also has a center mark tool. That was added fairly recently, but it does something I don't care for. So instead, I'm going to use the older tools for making a center line. First, I'm going to go to the center line type, which is right here, blue. I'm going to go to the center line type, which is right here. Now I'm going to put a center mark here, and I'm going to put a center mark down here. I'm going to type DLI, and when I do that, I'm going to type DCE, dim center, and then I'm going to select this, and it puts a little mark there. And I'm coming down here, I'm going to select this, and it puts a little mark there. Well, what I want is extension lines that come across, not just a center mark. To do those extension lines, I need to make a modification in the dimension style. Now, rather than show you how to do that modification directly, what I'm going to do now is say we're going to have to put a title block in here. So I'm just going to stop right now. And I'm going to stop right now because I'm giving you a title block that has some things in it already. So I'm going to add the center lines after I bring in the title block. Now the title block is on the bright space page. I just have to find it over here in my... There we go. Here's your bright space page. Here's your title block. So I'm going to go and put this someplace. Now I've already put it someplace more than once. It's in my downloads folder. So once I know where it is, while I'm in AutoCAD, I'm going to do something called inserting one drawing into another. I can bring drawings together. To insert that one drawing into another, I'm going to go over to a layout. Now down here we've got three tabs. Model, which is where I'm drawing. That's where always you should draw your geometry, full size. I'm going to go to a layout, and layout allows me to put a sheet of paper together and to put what I'm drawing on that sheet of paper. Now I'm going to bring a title block in here, but the first thing I want to do is to find out what scale can I use to draw this. If I move my, this is just called a viewport, and that viewport is simply a view of what I've been drawing. It doesn't allow me to select anything down here unless I make it active. So that little viewport is like putting a window on top of a sheet of paper. Open the window, you can reach out and grab stuff. Close the window and your hand bumps into the window before you can grab stuff. So if you had a bird feeder outside your window and the window was closed and you tried to grab the bird feeder, your hand would hit it and you wouldn't be able to reach in and grab it. However, if you open the window, double click, now you can reach in and grab the stuff that's in there. It is the same thing we were just doing. If I were to delete those entities and go back to model space, those entities are gone. Now I'm going to type a U and the space bar, which is going to undo what I just did. And I'm going to type it again and undo it again. That viewport that we're looking at, that little window, can actually be erased. The geometry is still there because it's in model space, just that the viewport is not there. So I'll oops that back. When you do oops, it unerases the thing you just erased. The key thing we have to do here in this layout is find out what scale can be used for this. The scale that can be used for this, we hope, is 1:1. So I double click in here, I go down to the bottom, and right over here there's a number, and if you hover over it, it says scale of selected viewport. Well, that's not 1:1, so if I pick 1:1, it gets bigger, and I think, no wonder the handout has such a small title block, because at a 1:1 scale, there's not enough room for a real title block. Well, I'm going to have you put a real title block in, which means you don't have enough room right now. So what we need to do is have a bigger sheet of paper. By default, it's an A-size sheet of paper, 8.5 inches tall by 11 inches wide. So I'm going to make some changes to this layout. First change I'm going to make is over here. I'm going to right-click on the Layout tab, and I'm going to say, let's rename this. I'm going to call it B-size, so I know I'm using this for B-size paper, because I need a bigger sheet of paper. Now I'm going to right-click on it again. I'm going to say, let's change the setup. So Page Setup Manager means we're going to change the way this page is set up. It's called B-size. You can leave that name, or you can actually rename it. I'm just going to modify the one that's there. I'm going to say, let's plot this. Now, normally you'd pick an actual plotter and you'd plot to something that would give you a printer or a plotter. We got a bunch of them in our department. For this class, though, since we're on Zoom, I'm going to have you do something called the DWG to PDF. You could also pick AutoCAD PDF, high quality, general documentation. There's several here. Some of the other instructors like those, and I actually do use the high quality on occasion. But for our purposes, converting the file you're in to a PDF file will be giving you something you can then upload onto Brightspace in addition to your drawing file. 2 files now. So I'm going to pick it. But I don't want A size. Instead, I want B size. There's 2 series of paper sizes, ANSI and architectural. We're going to use ANSI. So you're going to have to scroll through all these different things and find something called ANSI Full Bleed B 17 by 11. And when you do that and pick OK, it's going to make the sheet size 17 inches by 11 instead of 8.5 by 11. I want you to select monochrome as your plot style for everything we're doing in here. Just pick OK, and now you notice you've got a lot more room here. Now this viewport is just an object. I'm going to now move it. There's a command for doing that right here. We'll just move it into the center for now. Now I'm going to go and insert that drawing file that I showed you that I downloaded. To do that, I'm going to type the letter I for insert, or the word insert, or go to the insert command. And when I do, it opens up this little palette on the side. Now you may have things in here already, you probably don't. I'm looking for the tab that says Libraries. And when I go to my Libraries tab, you can see I've already brought a few things in here, including a B-size title block. I'm now going to go to a little bunch of books right here. And that bunch of books is going to allow me to go and find on my computer the folder I put that in. So I'm going to go down to the drop down. I'm looking for my downloads folder, which I need to get to by first picking this PC. Now I go to downloads, and you notice TB Zone is the one I gave you to do, and I'm going to open it. Now notice something here. I am in paper space. I didn't open the window. I'm closing the window on that viewport, so that means I'm drawing on a sheet of paper. And if you look over here, the icon you have is no longer the X and Y axis is just 2 lines. It's a triangle, indicating that I would put a triangle down on a sheet of paper if I were actually drawing this. Now I'm going to open this, and when I do, come back over here, and it shows up eventually. Hang on just a minute. It's still loading because I'm loading it. There we go. So I have TB Zone right here. So now it puts it on the palette. Now I can say I want to bring it over here and put it in place. Put it in place. What I want you to do is click on it, move your mouse over, and type 0, 0 so that it's inserted directly at 0, 0. When you do, you're going to have a chance to put your name as the person who drew it, and the name of what you're drawing in capital letters. Now I set this title block up this way by adding those as attributes to the title block. This is not something that automatically happens. I just want you to get a sense of what you can do with these things. And there are all kinds of other things you can put in. It's going to put the title block in place. And in fact, now that I look at it, I'm going to move that title block because it doesn't give me quite as much room as I thought. So I'm going to pick this, and I'm going to just type 0.25, 0.25 to move it over 0.25 and up 0.25 so it centers a little better. Now I'm going to make that viewport as large as the drawing area that I have. Which means I'm going to bring it here, and then I'm going to bring it over here, right about there. Now I'm going to double click in here and make sure it's set up to 1:1. Move it where I want it to go by pushing the wheel on the mouse down just like I did in Model Space. Make sure that still says 1:1, and now I'm going to go and lock that viewport. Now, a couple of things happened here when I brought that in. One of the things that happened is it brought in the entities, but it also brought anything that was already in that drawing. So if there were already some layers, they came in. There's a layer called BOR. That's the border of this title block. If I turn my line weights on and off, and then zoom in a little bit, you'll see that the border is also a thick line. And the line weights will show up, but you do have to be close enough for it to see. Now, let's leave that turned on. The other thing that happens, though, is it brings in other kinds of things as well. In this case, something called the dimension style. So if I type the letter D, it shows up and it has annotative and standard, which are actually always in a drawing that you start. But what I want is this mechanical inch, which I'm going to set current. I'm going to actually delete these other two because I don't ever want you to use them. I always want you to do your own dimension style, and you're going to learn how to do that when we get to dimensioning. So I have now a new dimension style called mech inch, and also has something under it as a child variation for radiuses and for diameter. Now the other thing I'm going to do is put this viewport on its own layer. And the layer I'm going to put it on is going to be a viewport layer. I don't have a viewport layer right now, so instead I'm going to make a new layer for it. And when I do that, just like the ones you made at the beginning, I'm going to call mine VP. And this one I also always make yellow, so it doesn't show up very well. Now I'm going to put that viewport on that layer. Now the reason I do that is because when I plot this drawing, I don't want that viewport. Let me just do a preview. I don't want that viewport to show up here. That line is something I don't want to see. By putting it on its own layer, I can also make it not only yellow, but something called non-plot. I can do that and get the little no bozos symbol here. So now when I actually plot it, it's not going to show up as a line. It's going to look like this. Looking at my watch because I have a class coming up. But all right, now what I want to do next is I want to add some dimensions to this. You'll notice down here, but when I typed in my name, it showed up here. Rod support showed in here. You're going to have to add a date and a scale over here, and the scale is going to be 1 to 1. So you can do that using the text command, just like you did in the first assignment. Now that I've got a dimension style set up, I'm going to double click to open the window, or go back to model space, although I'm going to do it here. Either way, you want to put what you're about to do in the model, not on the sheet of paper. What's the difference? I'm drawing on the sheet of paper right now. I go back to model space and you can't see it. I'm going to open the window. Now I'm going to draw a circle in model space. I go back to model space and you can see it. So when you're doing geometry, I want it in model space, through the open window, or go to the model space tab when you do it. What I'm about to do is to apply a center mark. So to do the center mark, I'm going to use the center mark command. And the center mark command, and you can find, again, all these commands can be found on the ribbon in different places. I'm going to type it in here instead. But what I don't want you to do is to go up here and under, you know where it is right now. Someplace up here there's something called a center mark and something else called a center line. And again, they were added as entities in AutoCAD, and I think they have problems, so I'm not going to use them. So what I'm going to do is type dimension, D, center, CE. Those three letters are going to give me the center mark. Now watch what happens when I do this. I get a center line that goes and has extension lines on it. Press the enter key and do that. Same thing happens, and that's what I want. Up here, however, I don't want that one coming down, and I want a little gap right there. To get the little gap right there, I'm going to pick the line, and I'm going to use a grip. When I grip that and make it red, I can move it. I know it extends by a 1/16 of an inch, and I know I want a gap of a 1/16, so I'm going to move it by 0.12. In other words, you need a little gap right there. Do the same thing over here, 0.12. So what I've done, I happen to know what those numbers are. So right now, that's what that center mark should look like. It should be extending beyond the arc, but it shouldn't be extending here because now it's sitting on top of an object line. Come down here, do the same thing. Now I need a center line right here. What I've created in this center mark is 6 different individual lines. I'm going to use them because what I want is a straight line that looks like that right there. Another one looks like this, and then I'm going to connect them. So I'm going to go back to AutoCAD, and now I'm going to copy those lines right there. Now again, you've got all these commands right here. I'm just going to show you something about selecting. When you select objects in AutoCAD, if you go from the left to the right, it makes a little window, and anything you put inside that window will highlight. Now I'm selecting just those edges right there. Press enter when you're done selecting. I'm going to say take this and copy it from here wherever I want it to go. I want it to go straight down, lined right up with the midpoint of that line. I've got 2 tracking lines, left click. That's what I want it to look like. Now I am going to take this line right here, and I'm going to extend it down to here, and now I'm going to erase the line that's under it by putting a window around like that, and it highlights only that short line because that's the only one inside the window. Press delete and it's gone. Now, actually, I'm going to undo that because I also want to put the same thing in the top. So let me copy this one more time, but just be careful. If you go right to left and then think that's what you're copying, it's going to copy everything that it crosses. So when I do the copy command, and all I want is that, I'm making a really skinny little window that just goes around those lines that I want. When I'm done selecting, I press enter. I'm going to pick this at the midpoint, and then I'm going to go all the way up here, line it right up, and then go from midpoint of this over to here, and I'll do the same thing going the other way. Put a little window right around here, get the midpoint, come over here, and do that. Now, that is everything that I need on here. And again, I normally would extend that. You don't actually need to extend that, but it's helpful. And that means I'm going to pick that line, come down to the end of this one, put a little window around just that little segment, and delete it. So that is the entire drawing, except for the dimensions. That miter line right there should not be printed. You can see it's on the con layer as opposed to the center layer. That means the con layer should also be a non-plot layer. So I come over here and find con, make it non-plot. I actually, and if you look at the preview on this now, that miter line will not plot. And when you zoom in, you get line weights that are correct, everything else looks good. I normally actually just delete that line, but that's one way to have it stay there so you can use it again. Now we're going to do some dimensioning. And the dimensions have to mimic the dimensions that I showed you here. You have to have a space right here that's bigger than the space right here. We're going to put your dimension for your radius inside. You're going to have these two dimensions are going to be related, so they're between the views right here. Same thing with that. We're going to put that dimension in and that dimension in. So we're going to go back to AutoCAD and do the dimensioning. And I've given you the dimension style, which you must set as the current style. If you use either of the other styles that are already there, this will not be correct. So let's just start right there. If I go over here, there's the dimension tools right here. And there's one tool that just says dimension. And sometimes that works okay if you just kind of pick something. But this is not what I'm going to use on this. Instead, what I'm going to do is go to the drop down where it has linear. And I'm going to say, give me a radial dimension. Then I'm going to pick this. And I'm going to move my radius and put it right there. Down below, I go up to dimension. Go drop down on the radius, and now I'm going to pick diameter. I'm going to pick this one, and I'm going to move that. Ooh, one thing I didn't do was set dimension as my current layer. So I'm going to now set it, pick those two dimensions, come up here, drop them on that layer so they now look like this. I'm going to put a linear dimension in here. The linear dimension is going to start here, saying going from here to, now watch this. Not to the center, but to the end of that line right there, because I need a little gap right here. Now that first dimension should be further from the part than the subsequent dimensions. I'm going to hover over that point and go straight down. I'm going to have that thing go down 3/8 of an inch is what is identified normally, or about 9 millimeters. So I can type 0.375. I can type 3 divided by 8. I could just say 0.4 because that's pretty close, and that spacing doesn't matter as long as it's bigger than the subsequent spacing. Now I'm going to have the overall dimension that comes up here, and I can put that on there independently. And if I come up here, that's pretty much the only choice that I have. I can go to linear right here, pick that point, and then place it. But there is a sort of secret command now in AutoCAD called DBA, Dimension Baseline. And it will automatically use the same baseline as the last dimension you gave. And when you pick it, it gives you that spacing automatically. So bigger space, smaller space right there. Come over here to this side. First DLI would be dimension linear, or you can pick it right here. I say, what's the distance from here to here? Hover over that, go straight up. And again, I'm going to go 0.4 just because it's easy to remember. And DBA, which is not on the ribbon, allows me to do this, and bang, I've got my spacing. If I had 15 or 20 of those, I could click, 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 and do them all. I'm going to right click or press the space bar. Oh, I can't because dim baseline. Sorry, I have to go back to linear now. So I'm going to do another linear dimension from here to here. Acquire that point, go to the left, make that 0.4. Once again, DBA knows where I started, so it just puts a dimension in that's the right spacing, and that same spacing right there is the same. I also have a special arrowhead that I use. Now the only other thing I'm going to do is dimension from here to here, and here's a case where I can delete that, which is why I like this kind of center line. Do a linear dimension, which I'm going to use a DLI. Say go from here to the end of that crosshair. Now come over here, acquire that point, go out like that, 0.4. Now if I take a look at what I've got here, and I compare it to the drawing that you have, everything I need is in there. Everything I need is in there. And when I do a preview on it, PRE, and then zoom in, it looks pretty good. So I am now ready to save this file, and also ready to plot this file. So I'm going to save it. I actually haven't saved it. I'm going to save it, and I'm being told that I have a class in 10 minutes, so I'm going to be taking off here. Yeah, I'm just going to call this drawing 1. So save it in a location. Oop, I don't have permission. My own computer. What do you mean I don't have permission? Because I tried to put it in the root of something. All right, let me put it instead. I am going to put it on my drive. Faculty. All right. Now, I'm going to plot it. PLOT for plot. I'm going to say continue to plot a single sheet. It comes up. It says, is that what you want to do? I've already set it up. I'm going to say yes. When I do, it's going to create a PDF file and ask me where to put it. I'll put that on my documents folder. And now what I've got is a PDF file, and that PDF file is exactly what I want it to look like. When you're all done, I want you to upload on Brightspace the DWG file and the PDF file. And that's it. That's the whole thing.